Rethinking Heroes presents The WholEarth Game, because everything depends on it.
Harrison here with you, standing next to Robert Redford, who needs absolutely no introduction, of course.
Hi, how are you?
By the way, I'm from Lake Forest.
Oh, are you?
You did my story, and I appreciate it. Yeah. He's the father of Sundance, the Sundance Film Festival. But among other things Robert Redford is known for is, of course, his activism. It must be exciting to constantly be doing good things for the world.
Well, I guess that's relative as to what people think are good or not. I mean, I do what I do because I believe in it and I think it's important.
And now we're looking at an issue like global warming, for which there is now measurable data. And Robert Redford using Sundance to showcase these sort of issues and events means that you're a leader in the solution.
It takes a lot of people to make something work. And what's really going to make this issue work before it's too late are the people that see the issue presented to them. It's not going to be the people necessarily just making the films or people like myself who are activists. It's certainly not the federal government who's ignoring it at great pain and cost to the country. It's going to be the people, when they get the information, that are going to get active, and that's where I think we will prevent some horrible damage.
And the future, it seems or it feels hopeless to so many, but actually if we all act now, all over the planet, it really can get better, right?
It will be if we all come together and act now.
You know, it used to be only big Hollywood stars with a lot of power willing to talk about what has now become today's reality. Tornadoes in Switzerland, wildfires in Canada, Athens, Greece on fire, hurricanes taking the tip right off of the bottom of Florida, even the loss of part of one of our own Hawaiian islands. Vice President Al Gore at the time was really the first to lay out a future that has now become a daily event around the world. When I spoke to him a few years ago, people were still thinking that he might be some sort of Chicken Little talking about weather patterns and climate change. Well, stuff that is now so normal and common, no matter where you live, that we forget he was simply telling us to take charge of the future and not sit by and let it collapse.
This is an issue that transcends any kind of partisanship. There are Republicans as well as Democrats, conservatives as well as liberals, who, once they see the facts, are saying, hey, this is not a political issue. This is a moral and ethical issue. It really, in a sense, is a spiritual issue because it involves whether or not we are going to do the right thing for all of those who follow us.
And we also know that drilling in the polar ice caps down, 650,000 years, the warmest year last year in the history of humankind. We're likely to see more of these if we don't do something.
Yeah, well, the warmest year in the atmospheric temperature record, which is a little bit shorter than that, was last year. But that long record, 650,000 years, shows clearly that the greenhouse gas global warming pollution levels are far higher than they've ever been as far back as we can measure. And temperatures always go up as those pollution levels go up, particularly carbon dioxide. So yes, this is off the charts completely, and it's happening in our lifetimes, and we have everything we need to solve it. We just need to get about the business of really facing it.
At the time of my Al Gore interview, Gore accurately predicted the melting of glaciers, but didn't know that Alaskan salmon would soon swim farther north to Russia to seek cooler waters. So much so that we are now in a proxy war with Russian fishermen because former U.S. salmon are technically swimming in Russian waters. But you see, fish don't participate in politics or in climate change. And this is just one tiny example of where we all find ourselves today. This, of course, being the lead-in to the WholEarth Game. Whether or not you know it, you and I are already playing it.
This is the WholEarth Game.
And welcome to the WholEarth Game. Cary Harrison with you. You know, many of us may not have heard of the WholEarth Game, but every one of us is now aware of how it's playing out. You see, it's based on an insightful new book by Alanson Charles, who has techniques it can offer for survival, well, a savvy, the kind that we're all seeking. Times have never been more difficult for many of us, and we're all just looking for a way through what seems to be impossibly unnavigable waters. Whether it's politics or the news cycle, finances, we all feel somehow abandoned in a system that used to make more sense. We've all witnessed in the past number of months weather events that could only be imagined on a Hollywood soundstage, but they're real. Whether it's the loss of part of the Hawaiian Islands, wildfires in normally cool and moist Canada, the loss of the bottom west coast of Florida, well, it's out of control. We all know it, but we're forced still to participate. How do we do that? How do we get through? What choices can we make so that we can not only survive but flourish? What are those 5 things that we need to do, that we need to know in order to make it? Let me start by reading you a brief book review on the WholEarth Game, because it nails the point brilliantly, and it's going to give you the right hors d'oeuvre before the entree coming up this hour. We're going to be talking to some of the greatest superstars who exist and are alive on the planet today. This would cost you, if it were books you were buying, or a CD series, or a webinar series, it would cost you hundreds and hundreds. But today, it's for free and for fun, because this is knowledge you need to have. So, Play the WholEarth Game review is by Vivian Sue Lin. The WholEarth Game, she says, is at once captivating, compelling, eye-opening, and thought-provoking. The ideas are easily digestible and tactful in their delivery. Charles brings forth a new and more innovative but faithful interpretation to Richard Buckminster Fuller's World Game. Bucky Fuller, remember that name? You can even Google it while you're listening. He brings, this is Alanson Charles, that faithful interpretation to Buckminster Fuller's World Game, a belief in the creative abilities of mankind and the belief that our abilities are limitless. It's a very cautiously optimistic perspective, but in the WholEarth Game, the book by Alanson Charles, Charles introduces the game as a journey to allow every person to collaborate and cooperate to create the best living atmosphere we can, and to also fix the negative karma that we've instilled into our planet with global warming and selfishness. Charles proposes that the WholEarth Game acts as a guideline, a compass for us to follow and foster a more livable planet and to prevent further destruction. We know what the destruction means. It's not way over there that doesn't affect us. It affects us. Living in Florida, you lose the bottom lower west coast tip, Fort Myers all the way down to Naples. Insurance rates for everyone go up. So what happens there happens here. This is why you and I need to learn how to deal with this stuff, how to have it happen less if possible. Continuing this quick book review. Everything Charles delivers is with the clarity, the simplicity, the eloquence, and he communicates directly and personally to the readers. The book is coupled with profound and thoughtful quotes from environmentalists and futurists, presidents, all that back Charles's idea. And what Charles does in his book is he gives us hope. It gives humanity hope for the future. To quote him directly, "The world is complete. Everything we need for real and lasting change is at our fingertips." Now, I'm just jumping in parenthetically. That's what I want to hear. The answers are already here. I don't have to go like spend more money or do backflips. It's already here. The review finishes with everything we need for real and lasting change being at our fingertips. Many books warn us about the detrimental consequences of our actions, but they forget to expand on solutions for repairing and mending our world. This is where Charles is different. He gives us instructions to play the game, to improve our lives, our ecosystem, our planet. He delves into the tools of the game, how to keep a clear conscience with the Toltec toolkit, and the principles of keeping us all focused on the task at hand. Charles doesn't only show us what's possible and provide specific instructions of how to be better, but he puts a seed of hope in all of us. I'll take a seed, I'll take a bushel, I'll actually take the whole tree. Thank you very much. Now, if you wrote a book, if you write a book that's the sort of review you would definitely want, right? There are many extraordinary and talented, brilliant people out there who have understood this WholEarth Game for many years. One of them is the well-known L. Hunter Lovins. And she's a down-home American, cowboy hat and all, environmentalist, author, and sustainable development proponent. Also a professor. She's the co-founder of Rocky Mountain Institute and the president of the nonprofit organization Natural Capitalism Solutions. This is what's interesting. You can make a lot of money doing natural capitalism rather than the one that we all grew up in. So you're going to want to hear more about it. Hunter Lovins has been a leading voice in the sustainability movement for over 35 years, and her work has been recognized with numerous awards, including the Right Livelihood Award. That's the Alternative Nobel Peace Prize. The Rachel Carson Awards. We all know who Rachel Carson was. And the European Sustainability Pioneer Award. Hunter Lovins is the author of several books, including Natural Capitalism, Creating the Next Industrial Revolution, with Amory Lovins and Paul Hawken, which has been translated into 20 languages. Hunter is also a frequent speaker at conferences and events around the world, and now on the Whole Earth Game program right here, right now. But why? Why, you say, Hunter Lovins? Well, her work has focused on the intersection of business and sustainability. She's figured out that businesses can profit from adopting sustainable practices, and she has developed a number of tools and frameworks for businesses to successfully do so. L. Hunter Lovins is a visionary leader who's helped to shape the sustainability movement and help many, many businesses. I keep pounding that because at the end of the day, we all are small business operators, entrepreneurs. We work for someone. We want that to exist and grow. She has now physically helped many, many businesses not only to survive, but thrive. Her work has inspired businesses, governments, individuals all around the world to take action to protect the planet. So now you need to hear how to do it for yourself. Hunter Lovins, I want to welcome you to the Whole Earth Game program.
Thank you so much, Cary. It's an honor to be with you.
Hunter Lovins, many of us won't know exactly what natural capitalism is. It sounds cool, but let's face it, it's probably not taught to us in schools yet.
This is true. Actually, very little about real capitalism is taught in schools. I wrote a paper recently called The Economics You Weren't Taught in High School, talking about things like what Adam Smith and David Ricardo, Pareto, the early economists actually wrote is not at all what people think they wrote. That Adam Smith, in many ways, was the father of modern sustainability. And in the book he was writing when he died, A Theory of Moral Sentiments, he said, among other things, that the greatest ambition of being human should be to be loved, that greed is not good. Ricardo, for example, said in terms that if capital is mobile, and today trillions of dollars zip around the planet at the speed of a keystroke, you are not trading to comparative advantage, you will be trading to absolute advantage. Their whole mental model was that capital is nationally bounded. Companies are fine, but companies are given a charter by the government because they are operating in the public interest. So much of what we call capitalism today is what my friend Randy Hayes calls cheater capitalism, and is based, it's actually corporate socialism, where we privatize the gains and subsidize the risks. You and I and the rest of taxpayers pay, for example, $5.9 trillion every year subsidizing fossil energy, which, as you mentioned, is killing the climate. We subsidize industrial agriculture to the tune of $1 million a minute. This isn't capitalism. It's, well, as I said, corporate socialism. Natural capitalism, in contrast, would say, how do we honorably do business at this time of multiple crises? We're losing life as we know it on the planet, the loss of biodiversity. We are in a global climate crisis. You know that very well. July has had the 3 hottest days ever in recorded history since humans were on the planet. And this will almost certainly be the hottest year ever. Year on year, we keep setting records of the hottest year. Scientists say business as usual by perhaps as early as 2040. The Mideast will be uninhabitable. I have a colleague right now who just went to Greece, said it's 110 degrees there. This is, and you talk to the scientists, our brains start functioning badly after about 85 degrees. And 110 is a little too hot. Now, if this is true, where are those people in the Middle East going to go? There's a book that was written by Stan Robinson, Ministry for the Future, that talked about the future. He was writing for basically 20 years in the future. Much of what he was saying, the total system collapse we're starting to see today. It's very, very scary if you look at the climate science.
Cary Harrison with you on this special 1-hour edition of the Whole Earth Game program. We're talking to L. Hunter Lovins, an American environmentalist, author, sustainable development proponent, and co-founder of the Rocky Mountain Institute, president of the nonprofit organization Natural Capitalism Solutions. Don't forget, you can hear this entire program anytime on demand on every single major podcast and streaming platform, from Spotify to TuneIn, Apple, Amazon, Alexa, iHeart, you name it. And make sure when you listen to subscribe and like it as well, because we're going to have lots of freebies and things you're going to need to know, along with those 5 things you'll need to know in order to flourish and survive. You can also go to playWholeEarthGame.com, playWholeEarthGame.com to learn more.
This is the Whole Earth Game, because everything depends on it.
Hunter Lovins, let's take a look at where things will likely go and what continues to happen if everything just goes the way it's currently going. And it is a serious problem. Well, let's face it, it's part of the normal lexicon. When you mention California to people, they say, oh, is it still on fire? You should never have to say that. How about those blazes across Canada? Still on fire? But I thought it was supposed to be a frozen tundra. Half of Maui is burnt down, which has elements of a rainforest. And then there's the rainforest, the lungs of the planet Earth that are wheezing and spluttering and gagging as we speak. But we're not some kind of audience watching the Earth go into paroxysms of pain and agony, and we don't have to worry about it. Like it or not, we're the mammals that crawl around on Earth's skin. And we don't want Earth to start to observe us only as ticks and fleas that it has to shake off. Hunter Lovins, let's help people understand natural capitalism versus the only kind they've probably witnessed so far. That includes me. I mean, I grew up here, so that's what I know. Yet companies are making lots of money thinking sustainably instead of extractively. Help us understand how this works.
Natural capitalism has 3 principles. First, use all resources dramatically more productively. 1, because this saves you money. And 2, because it buys time. It pushes back the challenges like climate change. 2, redesign how we make and deliver all products and services using approaches like the circular economy, where there is no waste. In nature, there is no waste. The output of any process is food for some other process. We need to build our materials flows around this concept of circularity. Also, the concept of biomimicry, asking how does nature do business? Nature makes a wide array of products and services very differently than we do. Again, no waste, shopping locally, running on sunlight, near body manufacturing. If you look at how an abalone makes its shell immediately next to the creature, finest ceramic known on Earth. We make ceramic in very high temperature kilns. You would not want your body anywhere near it. What nature does in that case, the abalone excretes a protein that creates an electrically charged substrate onto which seawater deposits out at the molecular level this very beautiful inner shell. So the guys at Sandia Labs said, we got to be at least as smart as an abalone. How's it doing it? Figured it out and dipped a electrically charged substrate in alternating baths of calcium carbonate and a polymer, which is what seashell is. And the stuff self-assembled at the molecular level just the way it does for the abalone. This is the future of industry, being smarter, not just hotter, tougher, heat, beat, and treat, as our industry tends to do. The third principle, which I think is the most important, is to manage all institutions to be regenerative of human and natural capital, the 2 forms of capital that at the moment are on nobody's balance sheet, but without which there is no economy and indeed no life worth living. So understanding what we are costing our economy, for example, by destroying nature, this calculation has been done by people like Dr. Robert Costanza. And the value of ecosystem services is more than the value of the whole economy that we count. We ought to be doing integrated reporting where we understand the value to our economy of nature. Now, notice I have not talked about polar bears. This is not environmentalism in the old sense. And again, nothing wrong with that. Anybody who lives in an environment should probably be an environmentalist. But this is better capitalism. This is better business. You will make more money. No polar bears required.
You heard it here. Businesses, not only around America, but globally, are making profits that many of them never thought were possible. It's about becoming equal to the technology that's now available and understanding that if all your customers die off, you end up with no customers. It's hard to sell something to people who are no longer there. So finding more sustainable ways to do business means your business will grow and thrive. The less your customers suffer, the more apt they are to stay engaged and remain your customer. Now, it's not rocket science, just common sense. You know, the founding fathers of this country, my ancestors, used to charter corporations. The company had to show that it was doing something for the public good, or it didn't get its charter or corporate status. The founding fathers knew that if this country was to grow and thrive, it couldn't have a bunch of P.T. Barnums tearing it apart. So in a minute, we're going to hear more about how you can advance your finances, be more financially secure, make a healthy profit, and have a healthy body, outlook, personality, and a much happier life simply by following Hunter Lovins' proven principles. This is the Whole Earth Game program. Cary Harrison with you. Definitely don't go away. Cary Harrison with you on this special one-hour edition of the Whole Earth Game program. You can learn more at playWholeEarthGame.com. playWholeEarthGame.com. We're talking to L. Hunter Lovins, an American environmentalist and author, sustainable development proponent, professor, co-founder of the Rocky Mountain Institute, and president of the nonprofit organizations Natural Capitalism Solutions. Don't forget, you can hear this entire program anytime on demand on every single major podcast and streaming platform, from Spotify to TuneIn, Apple, Amazon, Alexa, iHeart, you name it. And make sure when you listen to subscribe and like it, as we're going to have a lot of freebies and things you're going to need to know, along with the 5 things you're learning about that you need to know in order to flourish and survive. L. Hunter Lovins, it's interesting because everything now involves technology. The stock market is roaring, not for people on Main Street, but on Wall Street. Technology, AI leading the race. People are making massive amounts of money. The chip maker, Intel, has never seen profits like this before. It does not create the AI, but it is the delivery system for the AI. And much of what we're talking about is delivery systems. We've talked ad nauseum about AI, and yet it's still to be revealed where it's going to even go, how it's going to manifest. And that's definitely part of this conversation. Seeing as people listening are going to be hearing this on a streaming platform digitally, along with people listening on an old-fashioned radio antenna. 82.5% of adults happen to listen to that old-fashioned radio antenna. So we're definitely talking to them and people under 20, people under 40 listening and streaming. That's the digital world. That's what we're all thinking and talking about. So let's talk about technology. What can people do as younger people with technology that's sustainable?
Technology is the answer, but what was the question? It is a very important tool in our tool belt. Among other things, I'm a teacher. I'm professor of sustainable management at the Bard MBA in New York. Also teach at Fordham and a few other places. And when ChatGPT came out, I said, all right, I'm not going to assign writing essays. How am I going to do this? I will tell the students, go use ChatGPT, write a blog, bring it to class, and pair up and trade your essays. Edit each other's essay. That way, I get to see real time that they are engaging with the thinking, with the logic, which was why I wanted them to write a piece in the first place. But at the same time, they're learning to use a tool that we're all going to use. It's like when hand calculators came out. Nobody does long division by hand anymore. You use a calculator. It's a tool. So much of the technology that we have around us is fabulous. It has lifted humanity out of brutal misery. And it also, used badly, is literally threatening all of survival on this planet. Climate change left unchecked will end the human experiment. It's like George Carlin said, save the earth will be fine. It's people who are in trouble, and all the rest of life. Now, we know, again, using technology, how to solve the climate crisis. If we end emissions using, one, everything more efficiently, but two, renewable energy. I have a 5 kilowatt solar system on my ranch. I drive a Leaf, a little electric car. The solar charges the Leaf. I drive past gas stations. I love it. That's technology. Oh, batteries. Batteries take mining. Well, the way we do them now, but sodium batteries, for example, are much more efficient, much more effective than lithium-ion batteries. I worked with a little battery company out in California called Simplify Power, makes batteries with lithium-ion ferrophosphate. You know, you hold your phone up to your ear, it gets hot. The hot is the cobalt in the lithium-ion battery. This is why Teslas occasionally catch fire. Make the battery with different chemistry, you get a better battery and no risk of fire. So all of these technologies have trade-offs. They all have costs. All of us being here has impact. The challenge to us is to lower our impact as much as we can, and then strive in everything we do to be regenerative. Again, this is what nature does. Nature creates conditions conducive to life, in the words of the great biomimic Janine Benyus. If any of you want to see more about this, go Google Janine Benyus. You'll get a lot of her videos of what this is all about. It is incredibly exciting technology. As I said, it's the future of industry, and it will enable all of us to live more lightly on the planet, to be better stewards of this beautiful little blue marble that we have been gifted, and to learn how to build thriving lives, happier lives with greater well-being.
Cary Harrison with you. This is the Whole Earth Game program. You can learn more at playwholeearthgame.com, playwholeearthgame.com. We're talking to L. Hunter Lovins, an American environmentalist, an author, sustainable development proponent. She's the co-founder of the Rocky Mountain Institute, the president of the nonprofit organization. Remember these three words, Natural Capitalism Solutions. She's written multiple books, featured all over the world. Why? Because she helps companies make enormous profits rejiggering the way that they used to do capitalism into a more sustainable route, hence the Whole Earth Game. And of course, she gives lectures all over Earth and is with us right now uniquely. As you know, it occurs to me, L. Hunter Lovins, that humans are really kind of extraordinary. Nature finds a way to do stuff on a smaller scale. Nature gave division of labor to bees. They didn't vote for it, but they've got it. Division of labor. And that is a game changer for life. With that, they can do amazing things. Humans are like the only ones who also have division of labor, and with that, we can do extraordinary things. We've taken over Earth, and now it looks like we have to fix a few things. But it's now just about refocusing that division of labor, doing something better. I don't think most companies would be allergic to the fact that their profits can go up if they do the right thing. Many of them don't know there's an alternative. Can you give some examples of companies that have benefited from natural capitalism?
Perhaps the most famous one is Interface Carpets. And in many ways, the principles of natural capitalism co-evolved with our working with the visionary CEO, Ray Anderson. In about 1995, Ray he ran a carpet company. He bought a carpet company out of Europe. The employees said, "What's your environmental policy?" Ray said, "Do we have one? Quick, somebody get me a book on the environment." His head of HR gave him Paul Hawkins' book, Ecology of Commerce. Ray read it the night before he was to give the speech to his new employees and described the experience as a spear in his chest. He wept to realize there was nothing sustainable about his company. And he said, "We are going to be the first company of the next industrial revolution." gave the speech the next day, wowed all the employees, called Paul and said, are there any others like you out there? Paul called a bunch of us. Ray built what he called his dream team and set about trying to make Interface sustainable. I was sitting with Ray in 2001. He was bothered. He said, this isn't why I did all of this, but everything I'm doing for sustainability is enhancing shareholder value. I said, oh, that's interesting. I mean, that should be true. You use resources more efficiently. You use cleverer processes. You should cut your costs, make more money. I said, how do you count enhancing shareholder value? Ray laid out 7 aspects. We have since laid out 13 aspects of what we call an integrated bottom line. You may have heard the phrase triple bottom line. What Ray did was double his profits, cut his carbon footprint almost entirely, dramatically cut waste, increase his customer base, again, increased every aspect of shareholder value. So again, if you use resources more productively, that cuts your cost. Use less energy, you're not buying as much fossil fuel to burn. If you treat your employees well, you're going to have more productive employees. Gallup has done studies on this showing that a more engaged workforce will give you 24% increased productivity, 21% increased profitability. If you take toxic materials out of your process, now your healthcare costs go down. If you have a healthier workforce, again, your productivity goes up. You probably drop your insurance costs. You make yourself more attractive to impact investors, so your cost of capital goes down. You better differentiate your product mix. You build brand equity. You better manage your supply chain. This is why Walmart went green. The evil empire went green. Yeah, Walmart realized that they could cut their costs. They could get better brand equity. But they really did it because they had, 100,000 suppliers. They don't actually know how many they had. By putting in place the Walmart Sustainability Scorecard, they were better able to choose between suppliers. Question number 1 in the scorecard, do you measure your carbon footprint? Question number 2, do you report to Carbon Disclosure Project? All these suppliers said, who? CDP is a group of kids out of the UK who about 2000 sent out a little survey to the biggest companies on Earth. What's your carbon footprint? As you might imagine, everybody ignored it until the companies realized that the kids were backed by institutional investors with first 3 trillion, then 9 trillion, now like 150 trillion in assets under management. If you want to go to the investment community, you better report to CDP. And now essentially every major company on Earth reports to Carbon Disclosure Project. This, I would argue, is the best side of capitalism. It is NGO, nonprofit entrepreneurialism, CDP, working with a company like Walmart, getting all of their suppliers to start disclosing what their carbon footprint is. Because when you disclose, you start to pay attention. CDP showed that the leaders in measuring and managing their carbon footprint had 18% higher return on investment, 67% higher ROI than the companies that said, we don't care, we're not going to play. Again, no polar bears required. This is just better business.
Cary Harrison with you, and coming up, we're going to hear a unique recording of the Buckminster Fuller. If you're not totally familiar with that name, maybe you've heard it in passing, you could just Google Bucky Fuller, Buckminster Fuller, great name, huh? And you will see this guy literally, it was like an industrial revolution in one guy, a man who could augur an incredible future. And we're seeing much of it unfold today as we speak. Our job is to make sure that we keep that train on the tracks. These are great statistics. Imagine if they were freely shared. Imagine if they were plastered all over the front page of the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, featured on CNBC, Bloomberg, all of the other financial organs, which is where people look to observe their potential future. I'm glad that today is one way to get these statistics out and the reality of abundance that you're offering through your many years of work. Clearly, when freely shared, who's not going to get wildly excited? Talk about good margins for investments. People can not only hold on to what they've got, but multiply it while doing good on the planet. If that doesn't let you put your head down on the pillow at night with a smile, nothing will.
Some Republican congresspeople who and attorneys general, 19 of whom are attorneys general in 19 southern states, said we are going to ban companies taking what's now called ESG, environment, social, good governance, considerations in deciding where to invest. This, I would argue, is the essence of communism, of the state telling companies how you can invest.
I tend to agree with you. It's completely un-American, and you should be able to have the right to self-determination, the central tenet of our Constitution. And if you can make more money doing the right thing, it's a free choice that has so many extra benefits, as we're learning. And now that we know about it, it means we can do something about it, both collectively and individually. And this is the nature of the whole Earth game, because we're all in it already. And with people like you, we have a better chance of not just existing, but reaching our fullest potential, which is exactly what everyone really wants if they're honest. Hunter Lovins, where could people go and learn more about you?
They can Google me. Natural Capitalism Solutions has a website, www.natcapsolutions.org, NATCAP solutions.org. They can get my most recent book, which is up behind me, A Finer Future, Creating an Economy in Service to Life. And what would really matter is not me, but begin to implement all of this in your personal life. There are choices that every one of you can make every day. For example, I said half the solution to the climate crisis is renewable energy. The other half of the solution is regenerative agriculture, which takes carbon out of the air, puts it back in the soil. You vote 3 times a day for what kind of a future you want when you eat. What do you eat? If you eat, for example, good grass-fed beef, you are voting for a finer future. If you eat genetically modified crops, you're putting you and your children at risk. So find what you really care about and live a life that shows it.
Well put. Thank you so much, L. Hunter Lovins, who's been with us here on the Whole Earth Game. American environmentalist, author, sustainable development proponent, co-founder of Rocky Mountain Institute, and the president of the nonprofit organization Natural Capitalism Solutions. Just Google her and then spend your next 48 days trying to comb through all of that stuff. Who knew that you could win by not causing a problem? It's a beautiful paradox, and it's doable. I want to thank you again for joining us today, L. Hunter Lovins.
Cary, thank you very much.
Cary Harrison with you, and straight ahead, we're going to hear from the one and only Buckminster Fuller. Special thanks to the Pacifica Audio Archives, one of the great benefits of being associated with public radio, because they've been able to capture throughout decades audio that would not otherwise be known or heard. Incredible, game-changing disruptors like Buckminster Fuller, an American version of Albert Einstein in many ways. Voices like his were not the normal diet of the mainstream media because he talked about the structure of life, the secrets behind it. And, the mainstream media was in the business of booze and selling cars and cigarettes and dishwashers. So who was this Buckminster Fuller? Well, you see, he was a pioneer of innovation and sustainability, and his world game concept envisions humanity's boundless potential to collaborate and solve global challenges. This is the point of you flourishing. This is the point of you being in the whole earth game and actually pulling it off so that you can flourish, thrive, survive, and go up to that next level. The joy, the happiness that you deserve. So coming up next, a journey to a better world inspired by his ideas, those of Buckminster Fuller. And to that end, so get ready to be inspired here. We're about to dive into the life and legacy of a true visionary. Meet Richard Buckminster Fuller, a man whose ideas literally reshape the way we think about the world. He was born in 1895, was a trailblazing architect, an inventor, and philosopher, and he literally changed the United States with so many countless upgrades and inventions on every possible level, all the way until his death in 1983. Fuller's innovations knew no bounds. You see, he's the genius behind the geodesic dome, a marvel of design that's efficient, it's sturdy, it's beautiful, all at the same time. It's the very thing that's made Disney World millions, as it's that shiny, multi-paneled, round globe centerpiece where people go to visit. And they go inside, and it's cool. But Bucky Fuller wasn't just about structures. He introduced the concept of Spaceship Earth, reminding us that we're all passengers on this amazing planet and that we're responsible for its care. His World Game envisioned a world where cooperation and collaboration could solve global challenges. And that world game is the inspiration for Alanson Charles's groundbreaking book, The WholEarth Game. In a moment, we're going to hear a live recording, an extremely rare recording, thanks to the Pacific Archives of Public Radio. You're going to be able to delve into the life and ideas of this incredible thinker whose vision for a better world continues to inspire generations. It's the same experience as if you were going to hear a live living room talk from Ben Franklin or other visionaries who forged an exciting new America at the time. And today, you and I are living in it. We have AI, we have technology. All of this was born of Buckminster Fuller. Let's talk for a second, Alanson Charles, about examples of activities that can be considered part of the game. Many of us are imagining, well, what can I do that actually would be part of the game that you describe in your book?
Well, I mean, whatever you do with the intention to help another person, first yourself and then another person, that's how you play the game. Okay. It's so simple. You make a check and that's how we do it. But I mean, if we all thought, I guess, in terms of we want to imagine an arcology that provides all this stuff, I think maybe it might appear one day. You know, if I can, I guess, line everybody up, but that's not really the important thing. I mean, how you handle this information is really entirely up to you. Just knowing it's there is what I need to tell you. And that all the paths lead to the same place. We're all going to the same light source. We got to follow the light. The light is who we are. I mean, in the body, we are, I always like to tell this story too, is that for less than the energy in your vape pen, you get an entire life. You know, the energy that you have in your heart is turning oxygen into blood, food into blood. It's crazy. So how we take care of that is really the most important thing. Now, again, helping once we get our thing together, this is how it works. You first need to get your own act together. Now, where that means is entirely up to you. There's no wrong way to play. If you can be homeless and happy in Santa Barbara, I think you've won the game. I think you've won the game. And in fact, I know people in Ventura who have no money and who can get a breakfast every morning, and they have a few places to sleep that are not too bad, and they're happy as could be. They're not of this thing, you know. And then I've seen some people with a huge mansion, you know, and they're happy too, but they got a lot of bills. You know, somewhere in the middle, right? Finding the equilibrium is the whole point. And then to be moving forward wherever you are. See, that's where we can restart the game right now. You see, it's just about a bunch of small moves. Like, that's it. It's so simple. That's the problem I had, Cary, honestly. So my story is that I came to Simi Valley. I thought I was at the end of the world. Oh my God, like, where am I going? I'm in a really hard job. It was a construction job. I was killing myself, not making any money. You know, and I got hit with a lightning bolt, like, you're going to do this. And it was this huge idea. I ran from that idea. I thought I would never be able to achieve what I was asked to do, basically build the ark. is what it was. You, man, like you're no, forget Lance. Your name is Noah, and you're going to build an ark. And what? How am I going to do this thing? And I ran from that. I ran into all kinds of places. But next thing you know, I was at Art Center College of Design, and I'm talking to Jay Baldwin about basically the 5 elements you need for an ark. How does that work? Then I ran from that. I decided to go. I didn't want that. I want to go to Hollywood. I want to be a star. I want to be around stars and lose myself in that whole thing. Then you come back to the same 5 things, So we go to these areas and we come back. But the thing that applies to all things equally is what is really the main goal here. Housing, water, they just won't go away. So my problem was I had just these 5 words. Like, how do you simplify the solution or the problem? Like both the problem and solution. Housing, water, food, energy, and jobs are the problems and solutions. So simple. I got it. Yay. Now I had to go back and really figure out how to make words to say that. And that has been taking like literally 20 years just to come up with a few words to explain that you just need 5 things. All right. So that's the hard part. So to make it more complicated has been the rough part. So you do it. I can do it. We can all do it. That's it.
I think you so beautifully laid out the core, the spirit and the goal of what you've written in the book, Whole Earth Game. Let's take a moment and why don't you set up and introduce Bucky Fuller so that we can understand this man. We're going to hear his voice, a voice no one has heard. This is not on YouTube. It's nowhere. This was on a reel-to-reel tape from an archive where he was giving a public talk and getting really deep about astrophysics and other things. So it's been edited for the part that regular people will understand. But set up Bucky Fuller in 2 minutes. This is his introduction. You're going to do that, Alanson Charles. Who better than you?
Sure. Well, I agree. I'd like to be the Bucky Scholar of the day. I'm pretty sure right now I'm the most knowledgeable about Bucky. See, Bucky and I are a lot the same. He had the same trajectory. He had some failures. He had some things. He went to the Navy and worked really hard. I went to construction and worked really hard. He had a situation where he was feeling like this is all I could give my kids. He actually had the loss of a daughter, and he was just beside himself. And he continued forward, and then it just came to him: housing, occupation, travel, all these things came to him. But what he was talking about in the idea of cosmology is that this idea that we're all part of this huge all. Okay, he was coming to the same conclusion that I came to. These are the things. These are the laws that govern our entire universe. And Bucky was early in on it. That Buckminster fullerene is the construction of a molecule when you see it under electron microscope. But the electron microscope hadn't been invented when Bucky Fuller was showing us what it looked like. That's what makes him pretty cool. Okay, the other thing is really important, the flat map. Now, when you come to my website, playWholEarthGame.com, it's going to be mostly about those guys, my heroes, and this Dymaxion map. The last patented flat map was by Bucky Fuller to look, because he was a Navy guy, and he hated the fact that flat maps always changed the continents and they distorted everything. So he created a map that could be flattened out that would not distort any of the continents. Huge. And also by doing that, you start looking at the planet completely differently. You see it from the North Pole down. And when you see this in such a way, you start to see where things are located, and you start to be able to do strategic planning a lot differently. It's a whole new way of thinking. Now, the other thing that he talks about, this is an inside joke. If he ever comes to this, I don't know if he'll mention it, but the trim tab story is a great trim tab. He was a Navy guy, and I think he invented this, or somehow he's connected with this trim tab, or just noticed that this was so important. It's the smallest thing on a large ship. It's a little piece of metal that flaps at the end of the rudder. And it hadn't been used for many, many times, and was before this, there was lots and lots of shipping disasters based on the rudders. They could not really control these big ships. But with the trim tab, it makes a reversal of the water, so that it's really easy to turn a big ship with a trim tab. And he always claimed to be the trim tab. He wanted to be the smallest thing on the largest thing to make the most change. And so what we're trying to do with the Play Whole Earth game is really find the least amount of energy to make the most amount of change. So to do nothing in Zen culture, in Buddhism, we do Wei Wu Wei. Wei Wu Wei is to do nothing. And that is the hardest thing. So to do nothing, to do no thing is some of the hardest things. So, but what we're about is, that's the point. And that's where Cary Harrison comes in. This is where KPFK and Pacifica Radio folks and all of the people who are listening come in. We are one small thing, but we are power. We have the power of a trim tab, and we can turn this thing around. We can do it. Been done before. Look, I've got examples throughout, and there's more coming. I mean, the list of examples over and over and over in history. And that's what I would like to do, is invite your listeners to come to my website and just leave a comment, give me some information so we can start bantering. I'm only selling a certain number of books. I would love to show you where that money's coming and where it's going, and we will put it towards something great. And then we'll start to build, and we'll start to move forward, and we will find challenges, and we'll meet those challenges, and we will win the game.
We're now going to hear from the great Buckminster Fuller, and we can thank the Pacific Radio Archives.
I'd like to give you a very swift set of changes going on in big ways of evolution. As for instance, there is, in the whole history of technology, and you find it also biologically, there are biggest kinds of living creatures and some smallest. And there's some kind of a oscillating pattern goes on in evolution in relation to it. But in developing, for instance, a new tool, there's a history of our first mastering a principle, like discovering how to build a ship. And then the ship we get bigger and bigger ships. Then we get finally to really an optimum size ship for the largest waves. Then if they're going to have a bigger ship than we have, for instance, than Queen Mary, it would not have to, it gets to a point where it is now up on top of an enormous wave, has enormous cantilever function. Then if it's going to really go on, now it'd have to be able to span between two great seas. It'd have to be twice the size of Queen Mary. At this point, men began to discover how to make lighter, more powerful, capable ships. So the Queen Mary was the biggest. We got to 85,000 tons. Then suddenly the steamship United States was built at 45,000 tons, just a little more than half. She was able to carry the same number of passengers, the same amount of cargo, at the same rate of turnaround and round trip transoceanic trips. So they were suddenly smaller doing it. Then within a year or so, 2 airplanes began to demonstrate the capability to outcarry the passenger transport of either of those ships in a year. Just two airplanes outdid them. So suddenly they lost their significance altogether as a transoceanic passenger. So we had our great nation developing this fantastic hitting power, enormous, building up these great arsenals of fantastic hitting power to be sent intercontinentally or 5,000 miles away. Moscow, Washington, Peking, Paris, NATO, they all say quite clearly nowhere nearly enough to go around. That still remains a working assumption. That's been that way for a long time. Bureaucracy doesn't know anything else. So they say it's going to have our showdown, and we can't use the big guns. So if we're going to have a showdown, can't use the big guns, what do we use? Now there's the two most powerful, Russia and the United States, and they have done what the great powers have done right along before. when they're trying to find out how you're going to come out in the next war, they have what they call experimental warfare. And they can't have experimental warfare between the major states. If Russia and the United States engage, they can't have experimental warfare because they can't disengage. There's no way to disengage. But so what they do is to find two small nations that are warring, and they come in one behind the two, and they then, by supplying them both, they're able to really find out about the other one's strength. That's what went on in Korea, of course, and that's what went in Vietnam. Korea occurred before they had come to the conclusion, because you go back to Korea and you find it's before we really realized, this is before Khrushchev and Eisenhower, and it's before the Joint Chiefs of Staff had realized they couldn't use the big guns. There's only the United States seemed to be doing any important stockpiling. Before Russia built up very much momentum of its stockpiling of its atomic power. But Korea Vietnam is, after Russia came into a very powerful position. So we have then, what goes on in Vietnam was only to be where you join a war. And if you can't use the biggest, what do you use? Well, you go in exactly the opposite direction. You go towards invisibles and particularly into subversive warfare. And the biggest and most important task is to try to destroy the credit of the other nation with the other nations. Try to destroy its own confidence in itself. I think it's very interesting then that the United States, having lost World War III, it may be that we will come out of it with very great strength. Because I don't think I could talk as I'm talking to you tonight. It wasn't gradually emerging in the minds of all of humanity what some of the problems really are. This has been highly educational. We're going to learn a great many things. As, for instance, the United States is not a nation. The United States happens to be simply the most advanced phase of cross-breeding world man. As I talk to the Arabs, I find them having as individuals, have no animosity whatsoever towards the Israeli and vice versa. I find human beings everywhere around the world well disposed to the others, feeling they're being put upon by their political leaders. I find, as you must know, and anybody knows, there is nothing going on between the Arabs and the Israeli fundamentally at all. All that the back of it is simply that when it comes to the war and hitting power, the great military machines say, who's going to own that Arabian oil? That's all it's about. These are very, very stark things. Now, I'm taking quite a lot of your time, but I don't think man has much time. I think we're in a very critical position in the fate of humanity aboard this little particular spaceship.
The great Buckminster Fuller, years ago, speaking at Berkeley University about a world that hadn't yet happened. A prediction that's exactly what we're seeing today. Thank you for listening to the Whole Earth Game program. You are on Spaceship Earth, and we hope you received some nutritional enlightenment today. Please visit playwholeearthgame.com to see Alanson Charles' new book, The Whole Earth Game, and continue to explore the 5 things you will always need. Cary Harrison with you, and this is The Whole Earth Game.
It's The Whole Earth Game